I want to start off with the room real quick and make this interactive. Who's building on Bitcoin right now and looking for investment? Okay. All right, this is the panel for you. Arman, thank you again for coming to Mexico City to have this talk with me. Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll go into your Twitter following much later, because I think that's going to surprise a lot of people. But that's a little thing there. But yeah, tell us about who you are, where you come from, and yeah, timestamp.
Sure. Can everyone hear me in the back? We're good? Excellent. So first off, before I start, I just want to say thank you to Car and PlebLab for putting this on. This has been great. So can we get a round of applause for Car? Honestly, Car is one of the hardest working people in Bitcoin, and he never asks for anything, so he deserves all the praise, honestly. So a little bit about myself. My name is Arman. I'm the founder and CEO of Timestamp. But before I tell you about Timestamp, I'd like to tell you about my journey and how I got to building Timestamp, and maybe some of you founders can relate. So you may have seen on the schedule, it says, my name is Dr. Arman Meguerian, or I'm going to kind of break the news.
Here it comes.
I'm going to kind of break the news now. Most of you might know me as Dr. Bitcoin online. So
yeah, the whole time. The whole time.
I've been just hiding here in the shadows. So, so the first question I always get is, "Are you really a doctor?" And the answer is yes. Well, I guess I can say now I was a doctor. So, so I spent most of my life, working to become a doctor and an academic, studying neuroscience and practicing and doing all that. And something funny happened. You may have remembered everything relating to 2020 and the madness that the world experienced. And without rehashing all of that, I wrote a lot about my experiences in Bitcoin Magazine in an article called The Price of Principles, which talked about all the tests that I was having to deal with in terms of individual sovereignty, patient choice, and it got to a point where I decided to step away from that world and pause everything related to medicine and academia. And at that point, I was looking to work on something I loved and something that I was passionate about. And for me, that was Bitcoin. So I dropped everything. I quit my career, my job. I moved to Texas with no plan.
Wow.
No plan, no job, no contacts, nothing. I just moved to Texas. And let me tell you, when they say stay humble, nothing will humble you more than going from the top of a totem pole all the way back to the bottom and starting from the beginning. But if you can drop that ego and listen to people around you, people who have experiences, you get to learn a lot. So that's what I did. I put my ear to the ground. I started talking to a lot of Bitcoiners, technical people, people in Bitcoin mining, all over Bitcoin. And I just learned. I worked for a couple Bitcoin companies doing little bits here and there. I worked with some energy people on some Bitcoin mining projects. And eventually, I saw a problem with the space. And that problem was around the capital markets around the space. So some of you may know now, or you will experience soon, that when you try to build on Bitcoin and you try to start a company and you try to raise funds, you run into issues. There's a clear bottleneck here. So first and foremost, there's only a small handful of people that understand Bitcoin and want to invest in the space. So we're talking VCs, angels, that you're going to go to and that you're going to reach out to. Now, VCs and angels are a mixed bag, just like people. You're going to have good ones, bad ones, helpful ones, unhelpful ones. The problem is it's rather limited. So once you reach that wall and you try to look for investments outside, you all of a sudden get into the fiat world, and you're trying to orange pill fiat people on Bitcoin first, then trying to convince them on your company, then trying to finalize on closing a deal and so on and so forth. So it's a brutal, brutal way to live a life, starting something and working on something you love. And so that motivated me to start Timestamp. So I wanted to do something that would maximize access to investments into Bitcoin companies and also allow founders to raise from their community. So it was a long journey, maybe 2 years in the making. And now I'm proud to announce that Timestamp is officially registered with the SEC and is a member of FINRA, which means that Bitcoin companies can raise funding from both accredited investors and non-accredited investors from around the world. So hopefully,
it's big. That's big.
Yeah, please, Karan.
No, yeah, I was just going to say, I had a chance to meet him in Nashville, and we had a mutual friend, shout out Sahil, and Sahil had nothing but and I love Sahil, and he had nothing but the best to say about you. And he was exactly right. I think one of the things the more and more I get to talk with Arman, whether it's online in our chat or whether it's just email or even today, I'm coming to realize that he has the pleb kind of, and I'm not just saying this, but he does have like the builder pleb type of mindset of like, how do we get money to these people? Because some of the biggest problems that we run with when we're trying to build these startups is our family and friends want to invest in us, but there's not a secure way to do that. Can you talk a little bit about how that structure is and why that's important? Because, I mean, yeah.
Sure. So right now we are officially live at timestampfinancial.com. You can also find us on Twitter at timestampbtc. We'll be making formal announcements soon, but I wanted the people here to know first exactly what we're doing. So there are so many things that you have to worry about as a founder. Your own company, your team, the products you're building, your roadmap, et cetera. And then you realize that there's this whole other world of fundraising for your company that you have to actually understand and tackle if your company's going to be successful. So what I want to do with Timestamp is give these founders the tools to be able to fundraise effectively, get their community involved, friends, family, people in their world, and have those people that are supporters become investors. So now they have skin in the game in your company, and it's a different level of support for them, and it's also a different level of support for you. So when you guys go out there into the world, these people are supporting you on a different level than someone that you barely have any contact with or some person that you don't know very well that's investing in you. So we allow you to focus on your business, and we take care of everything else. So we do everything from investor onboarding to document signing, to payment processing, to handling your campaign and fundraising so you can ship it out to the world. One of the key benefits of crowdfunding versus other types of fundraising is the ability to market your company and your campaign to the world. So if you're starting a company, you're raising funds, and you want to get your name out there and get some brand recognition, but also start getting some money in the door, crowdfunding offers a way for you to put that out into the world. So people get to know you, people get to invest in you, and it serves as a great marketing tool in addition to a great fundraising tool. One other thing I'd add is I don't see this as a replacement for VCs and angels. They will always have their place. They have different benefits that you can always take advantage of. What I see this as is another tool in your fundraising toolkit. This can always be a part of your fundraise or your entire fundraise, and it allows your community to get involved so that you're not siloed from them in terms of the actual progress of your company's growth.
Yeah, and you guys know this, like coming from PlebLab side, some of the best times of my life have been just inside the lab, working with the builders and helping y'all get to the vision you want. But even more than that is trying to get to that success and whatever that means to y'all, whether it's an Open Sats grant or HRF grant or whether it's, you know, a VC fundraise or, you know, even now with Timestamp, whatever that metric is, whatever you're trying to achieve, this is where, like, when I see this with what he's making, I'm like, this makes a lot of sense because a lot of the first people who believe in us are our family and friends. Mm-hmm. And they usually have, you know, they're going to believe in the individual. They're going to say, hey, Car, I got 20K, I can invest in your company. Or, hey, Car, I got 50K, I can invest in your company. And to me, it's a lot safer than just adding to that cap table and making a mess of it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, go ahead.
So touching on a couple points that Carr mentioned here, I think especially true for early founders, you run into some issues when it comes to fundraising because you have such a limited pool of people you can reach out to raise money from. And sometimes they might love your idea, they might love you, they might love your team, but they'll say things like, oh, well, you're too early. Come back to us a little bit later once you have X, Y, and Z. So what happens with a lot of early stage companies is they end up dying on the vine because they're not able to fundraise to get them to that next level so that they are investment worthy from larger VCs that are able to write bigger checks for them. So one of the other benefits of crowdfunding is it can be a great bridge for companies, especially early stage companies, so that they can become investment ready for the next stage of growth. So that's another reason why Carr and I get along so well and we're so mission aligned with what they're doing at PlebLab is, much like Carr, we want to foster the innovation, the early growth stage of these companies and give you guys a chance to be able to grow so that when you're ready, you can go to these VCs, go to these angels and be able to raise a proper fundraising round and get there with the confidence that you've been able to progress through all the hoops and you're ready for that stage.
Yeah, and it just kind of goes back to, I've been doing this for 4 years at this point, and the Lightning space is not what it was in 2021. It was a lot easier to raise. I do think in this day and age, though, where we're at 2024, it's just a tremendous amount of people that want to help you with Bitcoin to get to where you want to be. PlebLab is that. But what's even cooler, I think, that I've seen in the past like 6 to 8, 9 months is this kind of new ways of thinking about how to create value for not only for the builder, but for the person that is spending their time and money and your own resources on to get them there. And I think what we're seeing is just what you're doing and then what maybe the other VCs in the space in general, maybe there's some collaboration that can happen. And I think long tail, we get there because it's tough as nails to do a Bitcoin project, really hard to even try to get to an investment. So the more easier we can make it to where you can have some baby steps, right? And people to lean on. And I think when I think of Timestamp, it's that. Just real quick, there's a couple other people, I think, similar, doing something similar to you all, maybe not. What differentiates between what you're doing, Arman, and some of the others in not only just in the Bitcoin space, but even in the tech space?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we're Bitcoin focused, Bitcoin only. That is our entire focus of our platform. Second, we are 100% bootstrapped and 100% independent from any VC funding. So I am a founder that works for founders. We're totally independent from any one particular VC, although we do work with VCs to get them on the platform and see your investments. So we also make our platform very founder friendly. So the way we've set it up is to have zero upfront costs for founders. So anything that you need in terms of getting set up, we'll get you set up with no upfront costs, and we only make our money through commission on your raise. So we only succeed when you succeed. So it is really incentive aligned for us to ensure that you go through the proper protocols to ensure you're compliant and also you have a successful raise, because that is how we make our business. So we are very deliberate in that because we want to make sure that incentives are properly aligned, because for me, that's one of the beauties about Bitcoin itself. It properly aligns incentives between people during transactions and in terms of how they interact with money. So for us, we build our company with that same mindset. We want to make sure our incentives are aligned so that when founders succeed, we succeed. And that's how our entire company is built from the ground up.
Love that, love that. And just talk a little bit about your team and some of the other things that y'all do on, because already right now you're receiving a lot of attention from individual founders and stuff like that with your waitlist just opening up a couple weeks ago. What is some of the feedback that you're getting early on? And then, yeah, talk a little bit about your team that you're working behind the scenes.
Sure. So we're very blessed to have a great team with us to ensure that founders have the right tools to make sure they could go through this. So our legal team is the best in the business. So our main point of contact, his name is Mark Roderick. He goes by the crowdfunding attorney. He is the preeminent crowdfunding attorney in the US, so when it comes to legal and compliance, we have the best in the entire country working on that. When it comes to the financial side of things, I'm very lucky to have our CFO, Ryan Deedy, with us. He's actually a former hedge fund manager, believe it or not. He left that world to work in Bitcoin, so just like I left medicine to work in Bitcoin. It was, you know, it was meant to be in that regard, so he's been great. And then we have a fantastic development team and a design team that's actually helping work with both investors and founders to make sure that we iterate, just like you guys do on your startup. So we iterate to make sure that the process and also the user experience is optimal. So you mentioned founders. So we are already in the process of onboarding founders. The problem and difficulties that we face and founders might face is that because you're going through SEC and FINRA channels, the bar is very high in terms of what you need to do in terms of the documents, the paperwork, et cetera. So what we're doing now is we're actually streamlining that process and making sure that that onboarding process is as quick and painless as possible and also as cost effective as possible. Yes. So in terms of cost effectiveness, as I mentioned, founders, no fees up front. In terms of streamlining that process, we believe founders can get onboarded within less than a month, so long as they actually follow the protocols that we've set in place. So another beautiful thing about crowdfunding is that even before you do all that in terms of filing your paperwork and et cetera, once you sign up to Timestamp as a founder and you start creating your campaign, your pitch to the world, you can actually share that with people in your life and start getting commitments of investments as soon as you're ready. There's nothing stopping you. Completing the paperwork and making sure you're compliant is what gets you from a private launch to a public launch where you can share it to the world. So what's nice is there's a nice stepwise fashion of, okay, I can build my campaign, I can share it with people in my life, see the response, start doing all the legal paperwork and doing all that, and once I'm ready, I can launch it and share it to the world, and at that point, I've already built up enough momentum. And so when it's out to the world, there's some legs to it already, and it's easier to get to the point where you're going to see that demand flow in from an investment perspective.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's what I loved when we were talking about it earlier, was being able to send a private link that maybe you're not publicizing yet, but maybe you're sending to your whoever it is, your sister, your brother, your mom, or your dad, or whoever, and saying, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take that leap, and I already using my own money. We'd love to see if you guys believe me to kind of go and seeing what they say, right? Because if it's a no, then you maybe they're like, Carl, you're dreaming. But if it's a yes, then they're like, no, let's up and go, I want to open up because there might be some questions in the audience. Definitely ask. This is the other thing I will say real quick is if you just have a VC question or not even sure what a safe is, I'm not the guy to ask. My gate stops at getting people to launch their companies and being successful getting it, right, Francisco? So there's only a couple people in my wheelhouse, Teresa being one of them, and maybe like one VC that I reach out to, maybe two, to get some advice on this stuff. He's another one. Like, he's neutral. Yeah. He has no. That's what I'm trying to say is like, think about that. You guys are all in the chat, so just he's in there. Yep. Just hit him up with the dumbest questions. He'll be fine with it. Anyways, just wanted to say that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, please. That's exactly right. I don't own a VC firm. I don't own a syndicate. I don't own any of those things. So I'm completely neutral. And if you have questions about fundraising, whether it's related to Timestamp or not, honestly, there's nothing better than helping founders. I told you this earlier. So when I left medicine and academia, I worked a few jobs here and there, including a couple Bitcoin companies. And it didn't take me very long to realize I am not employable. And I think many of you probably have experienced the same thing. So I did what everyone does. I started my own company, right? But what you realize when you start your own company is you'll always have a boss, right? And when you start your own company, your boss is your customers. Now, lucky for me, I chose the most difficult, demanding customers ever, which is founders. So I have to say, it is one of the most rewarding things to be able to talk to founders because I get inspired to build better products and services when I speak to you guys who are building the products and services that you're building. So we want to make sure that we match a standard that you guys are setting. So, you know, maybe I didn't know that that was going to be the case, that my bosses were going to be founders, and I didn't think of it that way initially. But I have to say what a blessing that was, because it's the kind of stuff that inspires you to ascend to a different level in terms of like hard work, discipline, dedication. So this is honestly a thank you to the founders, because you guys drive me to make a better company. Seriously.
So let's open up to questions. Anybody have a question out there? Jim?
What's a project in the Bitcoin space that maybe you're bullish on? Like, what principles can we glean from them that we can maybe apply to our business services?
So I'm going to take an angle that is slightly different than what you might normally hear. I'm going to focus on the investment and fundraising side of the business, right? There will be people here that tell you great advice on the technical side, product, marketing, all sorts of things. What I would like to say from an investment standpoint is you want to make sure that when you go to fundraise, whether it's through crowdfunding or through VCs or angels, that your company is an attractive investment to whoever you're speaking to, regardless of your product, regardless of your service. And so for you to do that, you want to make sure that you understand the types of fundraising that you're using, so if it's safes, convertible notes, price rounds, et cetera, and you want to understand the valuations that you're using, the different terms like discount rates, et cetera, because if you don't, no matter how good your product is, no matter how good your team and your company is, an investor will look at you and say, this person doesn't really know what they're doing from a fundraising side of things, and they might actually not invest in you despite how much they love your company. And you also honestly want to be familiar with that side of things, because you don't want to get to a point where in the early days you're taking money just because it's money coming through the door, but you don't really understand the terms that you're taking. And then all of a sudden, 3-4 years down the line, you look at your cap table and you're like, oh my God, I gave away 20% of my company for what? So you really want to understand that fundraising side. And as to what Carr was saying before, if you have any questions, or any founders in here have any questions on that side of thing, I'm very happy to help out on my time and just kind of guide you in the right direction to make sure that you guys are fundraising ready, because that's the goal for, I'm sure that's part of the goal from PlebLab as well.
I think my thing has always been, since I took over in 23, was like, I just want to get whoever it is in the room that comes to PlebLab to success. And that's it. And whatever that means. And when I see you, it's another value add to that success. You coming into our community, being that person that they can go to and talk to about this stuff, is what we really need, don't we, Jim? So like, that's where when I look at it, it's just a total value add all the way around. So, but yeah, it's incredible what you're doing. Any other questions?
Carr, can I?
6 months ago. Where were you 6 months ago?
Hey, you could raise crowdfunding anytime. I do want to ask you a question, Carr, because what we're trying to build at Timestamp is really a community, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anyone better in the Bitcoin space to ask about what's it like building a community. What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way?
So I do this thing called Sunday Orange Flow, and every once in a couple weeks, I will release like my kind of founder blog posts for that week. I haven't done one in the past 3 or 4 weeks, been incredibly busy. But go to Thriller Bitcoin, type in Sunday Orange Flow. You have all of my founder posts for the past 3 years that I've been kind of, and you'll see it. You'll see like where I was learning all this stuff. But to go to the question about the community stuff, I think it just generally comes down to approaching people. You hear this all the time in the space, but approaching people where they're at and not judging, but also realizing, and me realizing how special Jim is, or uniquely special how Francisco is, uniquely special how Oliver is, how Christian is back there, all these found Enrique, like all of these people I've had conversations with individually before we even got to this point, right? It's like, what did I see in them that I knew there was something there that I wanted to be a part of to help them get to where they wanted to be? And I think when I think about community, it's just being that person for everybody individually, and then collectively people just come along for the ride. And I think that's the way, just keep everybody really special. Teresa, I will also say, evens a lot of things out for me, and maybe you can answer this, but like she's a big part of what we do at PlebLab, and she doesn't get nearly enough credit. But if it wasn't for Teresa, I don't know if I could honestly do this. There's just no way. I think when I think of a startup and a founder, it's like, find a Teresa. Me and Nifty always joke about that all the time. She has a lady named Teresa that helps her too. It's a real thing. Anyways, that would be my answer.
Yeah, that's great. I think what's great is you come to a place like this, you make the trip out here, and immediately you're hit with waves of inspiration. Just people putting their dreams out there into the world, saying, I've paused my life, I've given everything to this thing that I'm building. And I want you guys to know that all of that is heard. Like we hear it, PlebLab hears it, Timestamp hears it. We want to give you guys the tools to succeed and allow you to continue to build in that world and help build towards a Bitcoin standard, right? Because why we built Timestamp is we want people to invest in the Bitcoin standard, right? We want people to move away from their fiat normie jobs and start working on Bitcoin jobs, starting Bitcoin companies. So if we can do anything to help you guys get there, please reach out and we'll be glad to help you. There's
a funny joke in the lab that PlebDev says. He goes, Bitcoin is my equity car. And I think a lot of us fundamentally believe that, and that's why I always say all the time, I think the fastest way to hyper-Bitcoinization is through entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. There's no way we can get to hyper-Bitcoinization without people like yourself, people inside this room that are trying to get there. So we need all sorts of people, all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of hubs, all sorts of places to make that happen. Do you have any other questions?
Hang on, I'm coming back there. Enrique?
Thank you. Hello. Hi, Enrique from Lightning Mounties. So we're just starting this. We are very new into the space. And for us, or at least for me, it's kind of like just confusing to know what's the right way to raise money, right? Mm-hmm. So I have actually 3 questions.
Okay.
The first question is, how can I start? What's kind of like the first step for us to get into that? Mm-hmm. The other 2 questions are kind of related. I want to know what are green flags and red flags that you guys can see for startups?
Okay. So you mean from an investor side, what are some green flags and red flags that you see? Okay. Yes. So first and foremost, I'll address the first question, is you really want to understand when you're starting a company and you're starting to grow into that fundraising stage, how do I actually go about raising money? What are the vehicles I'm going to use to raise that money? What are the terms that I'm going to set when I go try to raise? Now, nowadays, most startup companies, when they're new, they raise via safes or convertible notes. So essentially, when you're starting out, you're so new that there's no way to properly put a valuation on your company. You can decide to put a valuation on your company, but good luck trying to get someone else to agree that that is the valuation. So the classic Silicon Valley way of innovation, they came up with SAFE, so a simple acquisition of future equity. I highly recommend you look up that contract. It's probably one of the easiest contracts you can ever look at. It's 5 pages. There's 3 terms on there, how much they're going to invest, a valuation cap, and a discount rate. Most companies nowadays, startups, are raising as a C corporation through a SAFE. That's most companies. There are exceptions. Some do it through LLCs. Some do other types of raises like convertible notes. But that is a vast majority of the case. Now, once you understand what a SAFE is, you're going to want to understand what the terms are with that SAFE so that when you go to an investor, they look at the terms and they say, okay, this makes sense. So you want to be honest with yourself. This is where it can get tough because you have all these dreams of what you want to build and all these great things that you're doing. But you have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, what stage is my company at? Am I at the idea stage? Am I at the MVP stage? Am I at the product market fit stage, which is way down the line? What I find with a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially first company that you're not familiar with fundraising, is you're trying to raise on your dreams and your vision rather than your current state of reality. Whereas investors are looking at your current state of reality and they want the upside of your vision, right? So if they're looking at you early on, they want to make sure the terms make sense for them to get equity in your company, but also have the upside. So you want to make it attractive enough for them without it completely destroying your cap table and giving away too much of your company. So in terms of green flags and red flags, this also transitions into that conversation. As an investor, a red flag for me is someone that doesn't understand the terms that they're raising on. So someone who's at an idea stage raising at a $10 million valuation, I'd immediately look at that and say, this person might be really smart, but they haven't done their homework here. So that might put me off actually the rest of the company and the vision and the product. So what I would say is, number one, understand the fundraising vehicles, especially safes and convertible notes for early days. Understand how to manage your cap table, because as you go down the line, you want to make sure your cap table is clean so that investors who are writing big checks for you, when they look at the cap table, they say, okay, this makes sense, these terms make sense, there isn't 50 million people on there. And then the last thing I would say is you have to be very confident in why you built your company, where you are now, and where you're going. And that last part is the part that gets people, because when it comes to where you're going, you want to be able to say more than, oh, this is our roadmap, we're going to do the biggest exchange in the world in 2025. You want to be realistic in terms of the milestones you're hitting, but also things like financial projections. And what's interesting, and this I have to give a tip to Ryan, our CFO, what's interesting about things like financial projections on your slide deck, they actually don't care what the numbers are. They want to see how you think about it. What they really care about is your mindset. How did I actually put these numbers together? What assumptions did I make? Because they're going to look at that, and no matter what you put on there, it's just assumptions, and you're predicting out into the future what it's going to look like. So they want to see, does this person understand the market they're in? Do they understand their competitors? Do they understand the market size? Do they understand the growth of that market? So if you are able to put together a pitch that involves, this is why we started it, which is what our mission is, where we are now, all the milestones we've hit, where we plan to go, including some financial projections that have solid baseline for the assumptions, then you start looking at it as an investor and you say, okay, this person clearly has a mission, they're working their tails off to build it, and they have a plan for the future and an understanding of the market they're going into. Now I'm interested in investing. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you.